We gotta go to the bullpen. Hello listeners, and a warm welcome to the Highland Bullpen Baseball and Sports Podcast. Our Bullpen Bros will give a uniquely Scottish take on America's pastime. And in terms of baseball knowledge, it doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer heading for Cooperstown or you're fresh out of the minor leagues. This is the podcast for you. We've got a packed show coming up for you this week, which is the opening week of Major League Baseball's 2021 season. And we've got lots of great content coming at you faster than a Shohei Ohtani fastball. Bullpen Bros, Alan, Dave, Junior, Yorkshire Dave and myself will bring you our highlights of the week. We've got a quiz coming up which you can take part in on social media. We'll talk about fantasy baseball. What are you doing with your fantasy baseball team? Show mascot Hamish the Highland Bull will choose his hero and villain of the week. And we've also got a feature where we talk about the 3 things we've learned about baseball this week. But let's start with the Bros highlight of the week. Okay, my highlight of week 1 of the 2021 MLB season is pretty much a highlight with a little low light thrown at the end. Shohei Ohtani did an extraordinary double for the LA Angels, hitting the hardest homer while also throwing the hardest pitch by a starter in the majors this season. It was just past Sunday there. And obviously Ohtani's a bit of a sensation, but I don't think anybody could have predicted him doing that. Even just hitting his first pitch right into the stands, 451 feet he walloped it out for, was a pretty incredible moment, because I know we've spoken before about whether pitchers hitting is a good idea or not, given they're back to hitting this season, but there aren't many pitchers who'd hit their first ball into the stands and also be capable of throwing 100.6 mile per hour pitch as well. Unfortunately, I had to limp out of that game later on against Dave Jr.'s Chicago White Sox. I don't know, did you see that at the time live, Dave Jr.?
Did. Do you know, it was a really, it's a fascinating matchup the whole night. It was a really good series to watch, actually. So the incident that took him out of the game, it was a fantastic, it was a really action-packed incident as well, because I think from memory you had a bit of a wild pitch, you had runners kind of all over the place, and I think it was Abreu, the American League MVP, sliding into home, and he just took him out because at that point Ohtani had came to home plate to cover for the catcher. And again, it really was an unfortunate incident. You don't get a whole lot of sportsmanship at times in baseball. And I might be saying this as a White Sox fan, but Abreu, I think he was really considerate afterwards. He was making sure he was okay. He seems to be a good guy in general, but Ohtani, he hadn't had a great batting series up until then. I think this was perhaps the third outing, the second. He did a pretty unremarkable time at bat. But he launched that one, miles out the ground. It might still be going just now. And he's pitching at times. Again, I'll maybe leave a little bit more on this for my own notes from the week. But the amount of times, over 100 miles per hour, backing that up with fantastic batting. I watched him in spring training, and I was trying to find my notebook there because I thought, I'm bagging him for the fantasy league. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, it's spring training, who knows? It might be a bit of a blip, but the guy looks a bit of a freak in the best possible way. He just looks a talented young man.
He's only the third pitcher in the past 45 years to hit for himself in a game where they have the option of having a DH, and also the very first pitcher to bat second since Jack Dunleavy did it for the St. Louis Cardinals, and you'll no doubt remember this well, back in 1903, 118 years ago.
I've got a chance.
Yeah, so I think, as you say, in the nicest possible way, the man is a unique individual. I think would possibly be a way of doing it, but on the basis that they hit a homer and pitched over 100 mile per hour in the same innings, that would have to be my highlight of the week.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And I don't know if this is his official
nickname, but I think I saw a headline about what he achieved, and they were referring to him as two-way Shohei. So because he can, he's versatile and he can bat and he can pitch. And I have a feeling did he get brought into the next game or the game after as a pinch hitter? He wasn't even pitching because he's a starting pitcher, isn't he? So he's not going to be in every game. And I have a feeling they brought him in as a pinch hitter, so they must like him.
That's ludicrous, isn't it? So Yorkshire Dave, then what was your highlight of the opening week of the MLB season?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go for something slightly different, and I think it was in the same series, which seems to have produced quite a lot of interesting incidents. And I liked this headline. It was Justin Upton works 11-pitch walk. Now, this has got to be my personal favourite, and it was an at-bat that would please any supporter of Yorkshire cricket. I think in previous episodes we have spoken about some similarities between cricket and baseball, and it's a bat and ball game, and there are lots of similarities. I think at Yorkshire, protecting your cricket, not getting yourself out is really important. And there are plenty of examples of pretty obdurate opening batsmen playing for Yorkshire. But this guy, and it was a really important stage of the game as well. I think it was a crucial 8th inning at bat when he drew this 11-pitch walk. I think the count had got to 2-2, and it was either at that stage or at 3-2 full count, and he fouled off 5 successive balls, and I've seen, I don't know whether you watched it live, Dave, but I've seen it, and then he walked, and the walk loaded the bases for Albert Pujols, no less, to come in, and then he drove in the go-ahead run, and I think it completed a comeback from behind win for the Angels. So it shows you the value of, sort of these at-bats. So that's my highlight.
Absolutely. That kind of really gritty batting performance, isn't it, Yorkshire Dave?
Grit is the right word, yeah.
Absolutely. And Dave Jr., what was your personal highlight of the week then? You kind of hinted earlier on. What's your highlight?
I have to go with Yermin Mercedes for the White Sox. So he has, I'm going to rechristen him actually, which you'll know that this is my own creation, given our part of the world. But I'm just going to rechristen him Yerman Mercedes because he, what a real fairy tale story that must be. Just to give you a bit of backdrop, so he looks like one of these guys that has perhaps bounced around a few of the AAA, AA, single A type leagues. He's always there with spring training. I think at one point he was even optioned out to Allen's Charlotte Knights. And this was him, 28 years old. On the back of last year, we lost one of our catchers, McCann, who went to, I think he might have went to Allen's Detroit Tigers, actually. Or he came from the Tigers.
He came from the Tigers.
And we had a bit of a gap for catcher. So he's been substituting there and being our sort of second choice throughout spring training. And he's been dabbling a little bit in outfield as well. Just been trying to find a good home for him. So he made his debut and went 5 for 5, which his dad must have been sitting there ready to kind of cut out the old newspaper clipping, put it up on a wall somewhere. When your son goes 5 for 5 on his major league debut. I must have been annoying you guys the next night because I felt like every time he was up to bat, I was dropping another message in the box to say he's 6 for 6, he's 8 for 8. And although he's had some great moments again, he's homered during that period of time as well. He's batted in 6 runs already. I think he's made a wee bit of a short-term sensation in the States. I don't think anyone sees him as a long-term fantastic MVP type player, although who knows. but I think it's more about the story, and it's somebody 28 years old coming in, making their debut from out of nowhere, as another film would say. And even the last few nights, it's not as if 5 from 5 was that's where it ended. I think he's now something like 12 for 18. He's up. I think he's 0.67 for his average.
Yeah, he totally messed up his 1,000 average, didn't he? But yeah, he's still going pretty well.
Yeah, and again, it's great because it might just show that side of someone. If someone is on a hot streak, find a way to get them in the team. Let that confidence go through. And again, it's great. I don't mean to pick up on two things, Richard, sorry, and use the second one, but my other highlight, and it does tie into this, it's having some fans back in the stadium, because when Mercedes came off at the end of that second night, I think he was perhaps 8 for 9. These fans that are in the stadium aren't sitting there with a laptop with all these stats at hand, particularly given that it was at the Angels. They recognised going into the game that there's a young man who's went 5 for 5. They must be, in the same way that Alan and Dave have sat at games and took some stats, they know what's unfolding before them. They're knowledgeable fans. And he actually got a standing ovation, that night, considering, the White Sox were getting beat. You could see these guys, these Angels fans, giving him a standing ovation. And again, he recognised what a lovely surprise. It's not as if he went and done a cycle that night or anything. But I think people just recognised that's a special start to your MLB career. Well done, and applauded him off the pitch.
Absolutely. I think, like you've said before, Dave Jr., it's one of these moments which transcends teams in baseball. You get a certain type of events that happen, and fans, even the most rabid and devoted fans, can leave that aside just to recognise something great's happening in the sport of baseball and what baseball's all about. So that seems a great pick for highlight of the week, which just leaves Alan at the Bullpen Bros have set a high standard there for highlights from this first week of the MLB season. What have you got? Have you got a 100-mile-per-hour fastball to close us with here?
Got some good hitting, not dissimilar partially to the story that Dave Jr. had there. Akil Babu, Tigers, bit of a backstory here. I think he'd only played up to single A. He'd a bad injury. So the Tigers win their first 2 games of the season. Akil comes in for his Major League Baseball debut. He played both the 3rd and 4th game, which unfortunately the Tigers won. But his first at bat, Major League Baseball, home run. Unbelievable. The thing I loved about it, his parents and his brothers were in the stadium, as you would probably expect. They go and get interviewed, and I just think, yeah, they're sportsmen, they're iconic people, they're achieving great things, but I just think the reminder that the family are there, the family have probably made sacrifices to get their lad to that level, and to see him achieve that is great. The next day, we're getting humped off the Twins, the bases are loaded for the Tigers, and he comes in and he hits a grand slam. Fantastic stuff. 2 defeats, but there you go. And I think we might mention a couple of those incidents in other contexts as we go through the conversation as well. But that has to be a highlight. I just love seeing it. I love his interviewing his family being there. Perfect.
No, absolutely. And that's a great way to close out our opening section of the Highland Bullpen. And that leads us on neatly to some incredible performances there, which will have scored big in the world of fantasy baseball, a world in which the Highland Bullpen Bros have dipped their toe into the water this season. We feel we've made a reasonable start for newcomers to fantasy baseball, but we've certainly still got plenty to learn. And Alan, our opening salvos, if you like, in the world of fantasy baseball, I think it's been pretty with a accomplished beginning. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I'm pleased. I think our strategy had me a bit concerned that we're gonna get humped, but I think we've got a strong team for the strategy. I realised very quickly trading is an interesting thing, because I'm probably not used to a fantasy league where you're trading and it's only one team can have one player. So the issue here is, do you then get rid of somebody who's struggling, or do you then try and pull somebody in who's looking good? And I think at this stage, we're probably sticking with the theory of we've drafted these guys first. They're the long-term prospects, so it's right to do that. I noticed my man Akil Babu was drafted this morning into one of the teams, and it had crossed my mind, oh, there's a Tiger doing well. He's not playing tonight, so I'm assuming AJ Hinch knows how to manage the guy. He might go on and be the star man, but at this stage, I think we'll stick with the guys we've got. Trading is going to be hard for us because it's not as if we can then go and we want to go and pick somebody good from the Dodgers. We're restricted in our teams, but importantly as well, we've worked out how the scoring goes as well, so that might give us a little bit of a help as well.
That's good. That's going to help a bit, hasn't it? And
shout out maybe for our opponents in the first week. Angels over the pond. Matt runs that. LA Angels fans. So good luck to them. They'll do a good job. He does a lot of good promotion on the Angels and baseball in the UK.
No, absolutely. I would only echo that, Alan. And Dave Jr., for those that maybe didn't catch it previously, what are the kind of rules that we've set ourselves for the Highland Bullpen Fantasy Baseball League where we take on other podcasts? What restrictions have we chosen to pick our team with?
I think that leads on really nicely from Alan's point that how do you stick with your team? You don't want to just necessarily chop and change depending on who's trending or who's not, because we've got this very, very simplistic, but I think it's quite an ambitious tactic to only utilise players from the White Sox, the Red Sox, the Tigers and the Mariners, the four teams that we all support. So it'd be very difficult to go out there and think, okay, there's a guy playing well for the Dodgers just now, let's try and do what we can to get him in. The only players that would interest us would be those from our own teams, and we were able to take exactly who we wanted on that opening draft night, which was excellent. So now it's a case of which Alan's done pretty well so far. It's really just shuffling the pack every night or two and seeing where we can go from there.
Absolutely. And Yorkshire Dave as well. I mean, that is a fairly sizable restriction we've given ourselves because historically, for the last few seasons, the Mariners and Tigers haven't been at the top of their game. And even your very own Boston Red Sox, who you'd normally rely upon for some top scorers in the fantasy baseball, their struggles continue.
Yes, although I think that some of the batters made a few hits the other day, didn't they? And they got their first win on the board. And I think we do have JD Martinez. Yeah, please tell me I've not got that wrong. I know in our own little tryout league, I was trying to fill my team with Boston Red Sox guys, but I'm sure Dave nicked him, didn't he? Have you got JD in your lineup?
Oh, I hadn't noticed. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, so I think one thing about the Red Sox had a very slow start, didn't they? I don't think there was much wrong with the starting pitching in the first two games. Got a bit ugly in the third game, but surprisingly their hitters weren't doing anything at all. But they should come good, I think. So we'll get a few points from there, a few runs, a few hits on the board.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let it never be said that the Bullpen Bros aren't competitive because as well as coming together for our kind of all-star team to take on our fellow podcasters, we've also got a little inter-bullpen action going on there where we've all got our four teams, our individual teams that are competing against each other in a friendly mini-league. And I don't know, Alan, if somebody would maybe like to talk through the current standings.
Yes, I can find that very quickly, I think, if you give me 2 seconds. The four teams are the Sinking Mariners, the Roston Bed Sox, Detroit Tigers Suck, SUK, and the White Jocks. So they're appropriately named teams. It's live update. Richard's obviously asked for an update because he probably knows the Sinking Mariners are currently at the top of the list.
They are. They're the rising Mariners at the moment, Alan. Long
The
may it
rising
continue,
Mariners.
but it's yes, a decent start considering I know very little about what I'm doing.
What
as
I
a
would
fantasy
what I
manager.
would suggest is the league is reversed in terms of what is likely to happen in real life, and it's the Mariners, the Tigers, the Boston Red Sox, and the White Sox at the bottom. And I suspect in the real world of baseball, things might look a wee bit different from that. Dave?
Just Richard was really kind to bring up the standings there, which I'm sure he was completely unaware of. In addition to this, just to give us a third little league, we're keeping track of all the interdivisional games between our 4 teams. So, Alan, if I could give a slight update on that
Yes,
today,
please.
if that's okay. So, at the moment, the White Sox are in first place, and again, the Red Sox and Tigers are in the middle, but the Mariners are bottom. So, Richard, I'm just going on that depending on runs scored, but I could do it also on just any number of statistics if you want. Just
Every
now,
number of statistics.
yeah.
I think we're okay.
Are you sure? Last night, the White Sox managed to beat the Mariners 6-0, which that's the only game that's took place so far. But I think Dave mentioned last week the White Sox take on all 3 of your teams during the month of April, so that will be a nice little indicator to see how the season's going. But no, Richard's doing really, really well so far.
To everyone's delight, Dave Jr., I can tell.
Yeah.
But no, the Mariners got soundly thrashed by our White Sox. It was one of those ones they were lucky to get 0, to be honest with you. But in general, it's been a fairly encouraging start to the season, I think, both for our respective teams and also for our fantasy league debuts. And we'll obviously keep listeners up to date with the latest action as we move on week to week. Now, I know a popular feature has always been the quiz, a chance for us to show off our baseball knowledge or lack thereof. And Yorkshire Dave, as always, is the man in the know, the quiz master for the Highland Bullpen. So, Yorkshire Dave, I think you've got some questions this week, but also a new approach which we hope will add even more interest for our listeners.
Yes, instead of a sort of a competition between the 4 of us or me asking the questions and you 3, I think what we thought we'd do is just throw 2 or 3 questions out there to you 3 and to all our followers and listeners, and we might even post them on the Highland Bullpen's Twitter feed. So I've worked out 3 questions. They're slightly, I don't know, see what you think. They're slightly gimmicky. They're on a theme, and no answers today. So
I'm no cheating. I'm no cheating, Yorkshire Dave.
Well, it doesn't matter really. It's cool whatever you do to come up with it. But if you know the answer, don't shout it out straight away. If someone's listening to it, they might have a bit of fun with it. So, as I say, it's on a theme, something that I know a little bit about baseball, but not a great deal about technology. But both at work and play the computer and our various devices play a big part in our lives now. And the 3 questions are sort of combining baseball and sort of technology. So for the first one, which key on a standard UK keyboard shares its name with a defensive strategy in baseball? Which key on a standard UK keyboard shares its name with a defensive strategy in baseball? Okay. Second.
Control-Alt-Delete, no?
I'd like to do that with some of our players on the fantasy team, but number 2. What single 4-letter word is both a credit given to a pitcher under certain prescribed circumstances and a commonly used command function or option in Microsoft Word? So what word both describes a credit given to a pitcher, and a command option in Microsoft Word. And finally, number 3, can you give me the 2-digit abbreviation, that's a letter followed by a number, that might be seen in a baseball scorecard, which would denote an out made by a left fielder, and is also, I think, the spell check function in Microsoft Word. Again, this would appear on a standard UK scoreboard, keyboard even. So what we're looking for is a letter and a number that you might find in a baseball scorecard, an out made by a left fielder, or the spell check option.
Interesting.
Fantastic. Really ingenious, Yorkshire Dave, and I like that a lot. That was this week's Highland Bullpen quiz, brought to you by the Bill Gates Foundation and Microsoft.
I've had my vaccine as well, so Bill will be watching. So
Yeah,
thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill. That's terrific. No, that's a really great way to do it, Yorkshire Dave, and we look forward to seeing what answers our listeners and followers can come up with as well. You often hear social media people being called keyboard warriors, so we'll find out how well they really know their keyboards, those warriors there. Dave Jr.
I mean, just to pick up on that, please do get in touch with us via Twitter or however you communicate with people using that said keyboard. But just a small shout out as well. Some of the statistics that we got back in the last few weeks is that we've actually got quite a lot of listeners in both India and Chile. And it was just purely, if anybody is there, or if you've been to the UK holidaying there and decided to download the podcast when you were visiting, please do get in touch, because we'd just love to hear, how did you find out about us? And if we can start some sort of dialogue or get you on the show, that would be absolutely fantastic.
No, absolutely. Great point, Dave Jr. And if you're listening while you're in Delhi or Santiago, please do get in touch, because we'd love to hear more from you. And Alan, how can people get in touch via social media? How can they catch up with the Bullpen Bros?
Yeah, as youngsters, we're all over social media. We're attempting to be all over social media. Twitter's our main forum. Twitter's great for knowledge and for information, so we tend to use that. So just search for the Highland Bullpen on Twitter. We're on Instagram as well, and we're also on Facebook too. So, but for aficionados of baseball, I think Twitter would be the place to go. We've set ourselves a couple of challenges this year. First up, a tick to the Seattle Mariners, who liked one of our tweet responses to us. So let's see if the Tigers, the Red Sox, and the White Sox can replicate that during the year as well.
Did nothing else to do last night, Alan?
As I was going to say, those classy Mariners, Alan, let's hope that the Tigers, the Red Sox, and particularly those White Sox can actually arise to that challenge as well.
So that's a challenge for them. Obviously, it was the skill of my tweet responding that made them like what I was doing as well. But a couple of other things maybe on the social media, on the Twitter side. Custom sports cards. They're taking part in the Tee and Tops baseball card competition. They pulled together a fantastic baseball card for the Highland Bullpen, which they shared on Twitter, and we'll put that on our Twitter feed now as well. So well done to guys, Matt at Custom Sports Cards for doing that. And also to everybody new who's followed us on Twitter in the last week or so. We've had a lot of new followers, quite a lot from the Chicago area, quite a lot of White Sox fans. So thanks to Southside Zoe and Pinwheels and Ivy for chatting to us. That's generated quite a bit of interest for us. So we're delighted to have you aboard and listening to us over here in Scotland.
Absolutely. So please follow and subscribe. We're available on all your favourite podcast platforms. And as I said, we're still learning the game. There's always lots to learn about baseball. I've been told by people who've been following it for decades rather than years that they're still learning as well, and there's always something new. So this week, the opening week of the 21 MLB season, what have we learned? Now, I know that Yorkshire Dave has a particularly good one as well, which we could all discuss, I think. Yorkshire Dave, what have you learned in the last week of baseball?
Yeah, you're quite right. It's a game where It's incredible. It's only been going for a couple of days, a few days, and the amount of amazing things that have happened and records that seem to be broken. It hasn't happened since the year 1903 or 1900. It's quite amazing. And there was one thing that happened which caught my eye, and I couldn't quite work out what had happened when I first saw it. And it's almost like when is a home run not a home run? And this was when Cody Bellinger hit a shot out to center field, and he ended up being credited with an RBI single, but also being called out. And when I saw it, I hadn't really read the article. I was just looking at the highlight reel, and I think he did nothing really wrong in his strategy for running, because he hit it out and he ran hard the first base, and it looked like he was going to be caught out. And he kept running, and his focus was on getting to second base. But unbeknown to him, the fielder, he almost caught it. It went through his hands and over the wall into the bleachers. Now, there was a guy at first base. Was it Justin Turner? I think it was. And he was pretty sure he would obviously, on the crack of the bat, he'd be going for second base. But he was certain that it was going to be caught, and he immediately turned and ran back to first base. Now, so meanwhile, Cody Bellinger has got his head down and he's diving around. And this is a reason why he was given out. He actually passed a base runner. He passed Justin Turner, who was now safe on first base. So there's quite a lot of quite a to-do about it. And, even the commentators hadn't quite worked. I think someone more quickly than the rest of them worked out that he'd passed a runner. But it took a while for it to sort everything out and for the umpires to give their decision. And I think he eventually was obviously given out because he'd run past an existing base runner, and he was credited with an RBI single, though, and Justin Turner was invited to run round the bases. So, definitely learned something there. I think we all did.
It was remarkable as well, wasn't it? Because it was Remel Tapia, the outfielder, and it was actually a really sensational attempt because it looked a homer. I mean, it was beyond the fence. He flicked it back in, almost Yorkshire Dave in cricket, where you see a ball's going out and the guy, instead of trying to catch it because he knows it'll land outside the ropes, it'll be a six, flicks it backwards. And you see that in cricket sometimes, and sometimes another fielder will be there to catch or at least to throw it back. But it was an incredible bit of fielding, to be honest with you, and you can totally see how it happened because Justin Turner's obviously thought it's been caught. It looked like it had been caught at first, and poor Cody Bellinger's been done out of that home run. But that was a fascinating one. And on the subject. On the subject of home runs, my kind of thing I learned this week, it wasn't something I was unaware of, but it was the first one I'd seen, was an inside the park home run. So that was, so I got to see that was McKinstry for the LA Dodgers, and that was the first time I'd seen that, and it was the chap had done a good bit of fielding, but had given himself a bit of a crack when doing it, when trying to get it back from the fence. So he was sitting there, he looked actually half dazed, but obviously that allowed McKinstry to sprint round the bases for the inside the park home run. So that's the first one I've seen. So that was a pretty impressive one as well. And I think Dave Jr., you've got another one in terms of what we learned this week.
Yeah, it's more so that I've relearned something, if that makes any sense. And it was from the Cathedral of Baseball. Which again, I didn't know that Fenway was referred to as the Cathedral of Baseball.
No, I don't actually. Just so by Red Sox fans, probably.
Yes. So during, I caught one of the games. I think it was last night or the night before, and they were really trying to explain the difference between at third base and the shortstop position. because of the intricacies of Fenway's seating system, the seats are almost overhanging third base to an extent, like ground level. And what they were trying to explain was, if you are fielding at Fenway and you're a shortstop, when you see you get third base come over to try and catch perhaps a foul ball going out, the shortstop automatically comes over, because apparently at Fenway there's a really good chance that the ball can bounce back out. And again, the third baseman, no matter how experienced or how talented they are, there's a really strong chance that ball can come back into play, or remain in play. And again, it just reminded me, and again, the way that the commentators were talking, is that every single ground will have these small intricacies. And if you're playing at these grounds, it's not like in football, you can turn up and the only slight different dimensions might be a slightly wider pitch or a longer pitch. All of these stadiums have got different rules depending on where a ball may hit, a scoreboard or so on and so forth. So I just thought it was really quite interesting that, not only do you have to learn about the team, but where you're playing really matters as well. And I wonder if that does add to home advantage at times. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I think every ground has their own ground rules, and the sort of ground rule double comes out of that. But there's a sort of a myth surrounding Fenway, I think, where there's such a thing as a ground rule triple, and on the Green Monster there is a ladder, and I think it goes from the scoreboard up to the top of the wall. And there's this myth saying that I think if the ball hits the ladder, it's and bounces fair, it's a ground rule double. But this myth goes that should it get stuck somewhere between the rungs of the ladder, then it would be a ground rule triple. But sadly, that's not the case.
And just to come in the back of that, there was another incident last night at the Mariners when I was watching the White Sox game. And again, it's just a reminder, you may think that catching a ball, a fly ball coming out, way into outfield is a simple thing to do. Stick your glove up and catch it. But when they were going into real detail, our left fielder, Andrew Vaughan, is keeping his eye on the ball, making his way out, and you've got the track at the back to indicate just how close you are to that, to the back wall.
The warning track.
Warning. Thank you, Richard. And it just goes to show that, again, every ground is different. Every ground will have that different layout. And these players really have to familiarise themselves with every single possible ground. Because you've seen that the example last night, Andrew Vaughan, he's got his eye on the ball, he's making his way back. And these guys, we've seen it in plenty of highlights over the years, you can really collide into these back walls and potentially injure yourself, drop the ball. And it really comes down to, there must be a whole lot of awareness on that the ground, each ground.
Absolutely. Well, just before we go to Alan there to close out this section, one thing I saw recently on some of the excellent coverage on MLB TV was when they gave you stats, they referred to a home run being a no-doubter. And what a no-doubter meant in that context was that would have been a home run in every park in baseball.
Right.
And I saw another one where they talked about a home run saying that would have been a home run in all but 7 parks in Major League Baseball. So it was fascinating that they can take it to that level and say that, 395 might get you a home run in certain grounds and not in others. So it was fantastic to see the level of detail. And we know and we love the detail that goes into baseball statistics. But that was yet another added layer for me. And finally, Alan, to close out what we learned this week in baseball.
Yeah, it's actually very similar, but potentially different as well. So if you saw the Tigers opening game and a home run from Miguel Cabrera, as always, and if you were watching it, it was snowing at the time, he slid into second base during his home run, because what happened was the ball hit the fence at the back and comes back into play. So Miggy understandably makes an assumption that the ball is not out of the park, hence why you're sliding into second base. But obviously, I understand about the foul balls in the ballpark as well. But on the stand, there is a yellow line painted across the stand. So if the ball hits above the yellow line, it's a home run. If a ball hits below the yellow line, it's not a home run. Very simple. And it makes sense that there has to be, it must be set at a certain height, which must have some consistency with other ballparks then as well. But the player, I know my own eyesight when I'm out in the golf course, I couldn't tell if it's above or below the yellow line. So it's understandable that you would slide into there, and whether you get a shout or whatever. The fans aren't going to know either. So you've got the ball's above the yellow line. So it was a home run. Watching it on the TV and people explaining it was obvious it was a home run, but I would have had no idea that even existed in the ballpark beforehand.
There was a blizzard blowing at the time. It wasn't a normal sort of.
I did point out that the Tigers are welcome to come and play in Scotland if they can play in that, because the Red Sox postponed their game because of the threat of rain, so they maybe shouldn't come to Scotland anytime soon.
Obviously made of sterner stuff in Detroit, obviously, Alan. But just as well, the catcher wasn't there, because I don't think he'd be very popular if he slid in and take out the catcher when you've hit a home run anyway. I'm sure that wouldn't have gone down too well there. So a great collection there of heroics and a little bit of villainy in there as well, which brings us to our finale to this episode of the Highland Bullpen. Hamish, the show mascot, the Highland Bull, by popular demand, has insisted that he gets to choose a hero and villain of the week in baseball. So we've already talked about some remarkable achievements, some great baseball in this episode, but let's nail it. Who is Hamish's hero of the week in baseball? I'll throw the first name into the hat. I can't see past Ohtani. When you're setting records that haven't been touched for 118 years, that's pretty remarkable. But I'm open to hearing different arguments and different suggestions.
Yeah, that's a bit like the Cubs winning the World Series or Hibs winning the Scottish Cup. So I think it's sufficiently long to wait for that I'll back you up in that vote as well, Richard.
Fantastic. Well, there's still room for a tie if both Daves come to a different conclusion. But Dave Jr., have you got anyone you'd like to put up against a home run hitting pitcher?
I mean, it's very hard to argue 118 years wait for a record like that. Could only be topped by 121 year wait for your first 8 at bats to hit every single one. So I would need to say that, Mercedes is the first time since 1900 that anyone has made contact the first 8 bats, and again 12 of the first 18. I think that's pretty spectacular, but I don't think you can go wrong with either. Ohtani's is very unique. At the end of the day, Mercedes is stepping up there and doing what he's trying to, but I think Ohtani's is so unique, a double sort of skill. I think it would be very hard to argue against that.
But it's a very compelling case, I must say, Dave Jr. That's a really strong argument as well. As you say, the only thing I might say is that while he was doing remarkable things, he was doing what he does, but just doing it remarkably well. Where Ohtani's got that double-edged piece, which you referenced yourself there as well. But a great shout, Yorkshire Dave. We come to you, your experience and knowledge to settle this debate.
I think I've got to go with two-way Shohei. I mean, that was absolutely amazing, and I'm still sort of hoping that the National League might keep the pitcher hitting thing going, but this might be the last season when we see that. But if he's good enough to bat, he might bat anyway. So I think that was unique. Hitting is a hard thing to do, and what your man did with his 8 for 8 is astonishing and great story. But if we can only have one, then two-way.
Yeah. 8 for 8's great, but there's no way you can beat two-way this week in the Highland bullpen. So we need a villain of the week. We can celebrate the heroics, both from the pitcher and some extraordinary hitting. So, Alan, have you got anyone you'd like to recommend for the villain of the week?
Yes, I'm going to recommend a team, and I'm also hopeful that, given that our passion is travelling and watching live sport, that this has to be a unanimous choice amongst us, because it'd be heartbreaking. I'm going to go for the Minnesota Twins offence as the villain of the week. So the Tigers are playing their 4th game of the season. You've got 20% capacity in there. You've got 8,000 people. They're probably, most of them are attending their first baseball game live in 18 months. And they're 15-1 down at the 7th inning stretch. That's just unacceptable for fans to be so excited about getting in to see a game and enjoying the whole experience, and then villains like the Minnesota Twins offence turn up. I just don't think that's acceptable at all. So they have to take the award, in my opinion.
That sounds perfectly sensible to me. Daves, do we have any disagreement among the Daves, or is that a fair choice for villain?
Yeah, I didn't really see much evidence of villainy going on, to be honest. So I'm quite happy to support Alan in his view. Didn't he come back and score a few runs later on?
We got 6, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the relief pitchers are the heroes. Just the offense. You did specify that, yeah.
I think we did we actually finished the inning with the last innings. I think it was Willie Castro came in and pitched. So an outfield player came in and pitched. No scored. Nelson Cruz struck out Nelson Cruz, I think, from memory.
Right.
And Dave Jr., to close out this show, you reckon that's fair enough for the villains? Are you happy to consign the Twins to that?
I hope we don't get any hate mail for this, but can we put in the state of Georgia? No,
Yeah.
Is that not? Sorry, no. It's the only bad boys I could think of in the media this week. No, I mean, Nick Castellanos started a bit of a brawl between the Reds and the Cardinals during the week. I've not seen the footage at all, but he was issued with a 2-game ban. So he could be up there for a bit of a baddie, but I don't really know exactly what happened.
Oh, yeah, I think I did see that. I couldn't really work out what he'd done terribly wrong. He got hit by a pitch, didn't he, and had the temerity to stare back at the pitcher, but something else happened as well. So I didn't follow the story up.
It was almost like one of those classic football situations, I think, where the person who's hard done by is the one who ends up getting punished for their reaction. But what I loved about that, and nobody took me on this on Twitter, was the Reds v the Cards. There was a red card in the Reds v the Cards.
Very good, Alan. Very good.
And that is the final out at the bottom of the 9th innings of this episode of the Highland Bullpen Baseball Podcast. Please follow and subscribe. We're available on all your favourite platforms, and get in touch over social media. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, from fellow Bullpen bros Alan, Yorkshire Dave and Dave Jr., this is Rico saying so long, and we'll see you next time.